What you're watching is me gathering 8 stacks of wool at 80,000% speed. And you might have several questions, one of which being why did I not just build a wool farm? And the answer to that one's quite simple. I didn't think of it until literally just now. And the other question you might have is, why do I need 7.5 stacks of wool? And that one's going to require a little bit more explaining. Short answer is power. In the last episode, I made this create mod workshop that has just about every single machine I could ever need, including a couple that I literally don't, but all the create mod machines require power, specifically rotational power. That's why everything here is spinning just a little bit. But because there's so many machines in this to make it completely no compromises in terms of the machines that I want, it requires a ton of rotational energy. Currently, all of that energy is being supplied by these 4 water wheels. The entire machine needs about 1,000 stress units to function, and each of these provide about 250 stress units, so we're all good. It powers the entire thing. But there is one pretty glaring problem. Water wheels at their base speed are really slow. Specifically, this whole thing is running at 8 RPM, and that's a problem for a couple of reasons. Some of the machines in here have a straight up speed requirement, like the mixer over there just needs to be 32 RPM or higher, and the machines on the sides here were really designed for maximum speed, so if you try and use them at lower speed by pressing this button, it kind of breaks and floods the entire room with water, which is, for obvious reasons, a problem that I need to fix. And honestly, I probably shouldn't have done that. I forgot that there were snow layers in here, which get, broken by water, so I've got to fix that real quick. And all this is not even to mention the fact that all of these machines just go faster if you're at a higher speed, and having to wait less time for processors to process is kind of just a nice thing to have. I don't want to have to wait ages to press a stack of iron ingots into iron plates. So we need this thing to be at faster speeds. And with the create mod, there's a couple different ways to do that. I've made a little demonstration here of the 2 different ways to get up to the maximum speed of 256 RPM, starting with just a water wheel. The first one here is a little bit of a mess. It just takes a big gear, goes into a small gear, and that doubles the speed. And we do that 5 times here, and that gets our 8 RPM of the water wheel all the way up to our 256 RPM. And honestly, this works, and it's not that big. It's kind of unwieldy, but I could definitely fit it in underground somewhere over there. But option 2 is sleek and perfect. We have a water wheel feeding into a thing called a rotational speed controller. We set that rotational speed controller to literally any speed we want. We could do 1 rotation per minute if we wanted to, but you can also do 256, and it just works. This thing is easy as can be. Except for the crafting recipe, which obviously isn't that bad because, I've already built it, but it requires this thing called a precision mechanism, and the only way to make that is sequenced assembly. Now, sequenced assembly really isn't that bad. You just need to use a deployer, give it some initial item, and then you give it a sequence of other items, in this case, small cogwheel, large cogwheel, iron nugget, and it'll start to make the thing. The only problem with precision mechanisms is you have to do this 5 times over for a total of 15 of this thing going up and down, and that takes a while at this speed. So it's not really a hard crafting recipe, it's just really, really tedious. But then again, the things that precision mechanisms are used to do are pretty universally really, really great, so they're always worth actually making, and the rotational speed controller is probably the most versatile of them, but all of the others are equally as overpowered. Anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, but let's get this rotational speed controller in place so we can actually get this thing to 256 RPM. Okay, I had to move some things around so I could actually fit the speed controller in here. I just moved the water wheels 1 down so that this could do its 1 little block rise, but if we place that down, set it to 256, and put a large cogwheel in place, it doesn't work. Unsurprisingly, the create mod actually requires more power the more speed you do. They're directly proportional, so if you want twice the speed, you need twice the power. In this case, we're doing 32 times the speed, so we need 32 times the power. Now, there's a couple options on how I could do that. I could literally just do 32 times the amount of water wheels. I could just have about 110 of them going all the way out here, which is how many you would need to actually power this whole thing. But there's 2 reasons I don't want to do that. Reason number 1, that's really boring. It's just about the simplest solution you could come up with. And reason number 2 is it doesn't use the 7 stacks of wool I just gathered. And the only way I can see to do that is to go to the next source of power in the Create mod, which is windmills. And windmills are great. All that matters is that you have sail blocks attached to a windmill bearing, and the amount of power output you get is directly proportional to the amount of sail blocks you have on it. 8 is the minimum, so if you make a tiny little windmill like this, you get a pretty small amount of power. This is about 2 water wheels worth, and honestly, it's really not that much, but you can make a bigger windmill. If you make one yay big, you get yay amount of power, and honestly, that's a pretty good chunk of power, and you can go even bigger. This is the max size windmill with 128 sail blocks, that being either wool or the actual sail blocks there, and you get a pretty crazy amount of power. Just 4 of these would be enough to power the entire workshop, and that is exactly what I'm going to do. Now you might be thinking, where am I going to put these things? They are absolutely gigantic, and I could probably hide them underground, but it'd honestly be a challenge. And my answer to that is cube. You see, the shape of the windmill doesn't actually matter. These look nice and all, but this cube of 125 wool blocks is just as efficient as this giant shape. This one just happens to take up a whole lot less space. So if I build 4 of these little cube things underground, it will power the entire workshop. So now we've come full circle to why I started the episode by gathering just a ton of wool. I've gone ahead and crafted the windmill bearings as well, so I think it's just about time to get digging on a giant hole to make these windmills in. Although windmills might be a little bit of a strong name for these, considering I'm pretty sure there's no wind down here, and they just don't look like windmills, so I'm going to call them cube mills instead. Anyway, I've got a big hole now. It looks like it takes up a lot more space now that I'm not in a blank void testing world. I mean, this thing is like bigger than one of the workshop rooms with all of the stuff like surrounding them. So it takes up a lot of space, but honestly, it's more compact than 110 water wheels, so I think I'm fine with it. But now it's time to fill these holes with a whole lot of wool. Of course, I have to actually make sure the windmills are separate from each other though, so I'm starting off by making giant cubes of super glue, which will actually hold all the wool together and attach it to the windmill bearings. Now that it's done, it looks a whole lot goofier. All of that empty space is just like filled with wool, and you can't tell that they're even separated by super glue unless you're actually holding super glue. So it kind of just looks like giant walls of wool. But theoretically, if I turn all of these on... Okay. If I flip the direction... Okay, we're good. Just have to flip the direction of like half of them so that they're spinning the same way. It works. All of the mills are going. They look real goofy, but more importantly, this thing is spinning at maximum speed, which means the entire workshop should now be functioning at 256 RPM, and also backwards? Maybe? I can't tell because it's going so fast, but I'm going to check because a lot of these things don't work if they're backwards. Yeah, it was going backwards. I'm glad I checked. I just cranked the speed down to like 10 RPM so you can actually tell which way it's going. And luckily, it's pretty easy fix because we have the speed controller. I can just take this, flip it to the top, and put it back at max speed. So now everything should be fully functional and real fast. And the first thing I want to test is these machines, because they're the one thing that I like haven't really got to mess around with, because they actually like need to be at max speed for them to work at all. But if I press this button, this should switch from being a haunter to being a washer. And it doesn't even flood the room doing it. Theoretically, this one should work too. And it does, hopefully in both directions. I actually didn't check this one. Yeah, they both work. Okay, that's so cool. And just to show how much faster things are, I've got a stack of copper ingots here, and I want them to be turned into plates. Granted, it still takes like a bit of time. I don't actually know how many per second this is doing. It looks like it's maybe 2 or 3, but it goes so much faster than if I had to do this at 8 RPM, which is so nice. And just like that, I've got a stack of copper sheets, and I didn't even have to wait that long, and that now goes for every single machine in here. So let's go ahead and do some projects with this thing. First order of business is going to be an elevator, because that was kind of the reason that I built that entire Create workshop, even though I really just want it for the sake of having it. My theoretical reason was I wanted to have an elevator in my house, so let's go ahead and build that. I've already gone ahead and gotten most of the components in place. We've got contraption controls here and some redstone contacts here, the one in the elevator, and then we've got one there and one behind here to tell it where the levels are. And then all the parts of the elevator are glued together so that the entire thing will move up and down. It's just missing one thing, which is this elevator pulley. It's not the most complicated recipe in the world, so I just went ahead and made it, and it's especially easy now that we have a fully done up Create workshop, and it's just going to go right up there. There we go, and now I just need to power this thing, which I could pretty easily just like hijack a little bit of power from my power system for the workshop, because these 4 have plenty of power to spare, I think, but hopefully at least enough to run an elevator pulley. I could just have a little thing go up there, but I don't really want to. I'm going to have this on its own power network, mostly for the reason of I just want to, but also the original design of the starter base, it has a tower here because I was going to put a windmill on this tower, so it'd feel a little weird to not do that. So instead of just like connecting it to that power network, I'm going to build a windmill here and have that power the elevator. And this one is actually going to look nice because, you know, it's hanging off the front of my base. So I'm actually decorating the windmill bearing just a little bit, and then we'll have a nice pretty windmill out the front. Just like that, we've got a windmill that is nice and big enough to produce enough power to actually power the elevator. It heads into here where I've managed to squeeze in a little rotational speed controller just to get it up to maximum speed, because having this elevator go as fast as possible is very important. And then that heads down a chain drive, or not a chain drive, a kelp belt all the way down to the bottom. And I debated doing either a shaft or a encased chain drive for this, but I think this one definitely looks the best because you can also color it, also it's fun colors, so I think it turns out pretty good. And now all we have to do to assemble the elevator is right click on that bearing, which might be a little bit of a challenge to get to unless I can reach it from here. I can reach it from here, we're good. And now we have a fully functional elevator, which it's really easy to make these with Create, and I kind of love it. So we can now go between the levels. Look at that. Isn't that so worth all of the effort it took to make this? The answer is yes, it is. And I can even like give the levels different descriptions. So I can say this one is upstairs, even though that doesn't make any sense because it's up elevators, but that sounds weird. I could say this one is the ground floor. I feel like ground floor might be a bit too long of a description. Also, that says flower. Nice. Floor. Okay, because the thing is, it displays this little description right there. I think that's a fine size. So now we have upstairs, ground floor, and of course, I can add as many levels to this as I want, and my mine shaft is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and dig this whole thing out, and we can add a level all the way down here for like my iron level, and we can go even deeper and have one all the way at the bottom where I can mine diamonds. You know, when I said that I was going to just dig to the bottom of the world, I didn't really realize how far down that was. I burned through like 3 iron pickaxes doing this, but my elevator makes very short work of it. We are all the way at the bottom for diamond level, and of course I've also got the level for iron, just in case I need to mine iron or like coal or zinc or copper, just because they don't spawn at the bottom of the world. Speaking of mining, I think that is the next project we're going to work on with the workshop here. An automatic mining machine, which the Create mod makes shockingly easy to build, to the point that it like almost feels like cheating just because it gets rid of that entire aspect of the game with so little effort, but they're kind of hard to talk about before I build it, so I've got all of the resources here. It's once again, it's not a lot of stuff, and I'm just going to go ahead and build it, and then I'll explain how the entire thing works. And the only reason I'm doing such a small contraption with the schematic cannon instead of just by hand is because a lot of the things you have to place are just at annoying angles. Like these deployers are super annoying to get like that. So it's just way easier to have the schematic cannon do it for me than to actually place it myself. And actually, just like that, it's done. You might notice a small problem with it, though, is that I have built it outside and not nearly anywhere near anywhere where I would be mining, but that is a very small issue, because luckily, with the Create mod, you can do this thing called minecart assembly, which essentially, you put an entire glued together thing, which this thing is all glued together, onto a minecart, then you can just pick it up. Nice and easy. This is actually one of the reasons I like these mining machines so much, because you can just take it from iron level to diamond level to like a dock somewhere super easily with like almost zero effort, and then when you want to place it down and actually use it, bam, you just throw it down on the ground and it just works. And luckily, because it's an entity, you don't even need to dig out enough space for it. It'll kind of just chill inside of blocks and it'll just work. Although I think I actually have to be a little bit more careful placing this, in that I have to give it a couple rails to get started on, because it will place rails itself, but it needs a couple to like get it going before it actually works. Now, all I have to do with this thing is give it some rails, give it some blocks, and then give the furnace minecart that's at the center of it some power, and it'll start to go. And I'm just going to sit on this seat while I explain how it works, because this thing is fully AFKable. Obviously, we've got a whole big wall of drills here that's doing all of the actual mining, But you might notice things like water can be problematic for that, which is what the whole part at the center here is doing. It's a little hard to see, but we've got 8 drills that are kind of out in front of everything else, so they drill any blocks out here out. And then you might notice it's getting filled with cobblestone, or you might not, because it's really dark. And then we have, of course, drills at the center that remine out the middle of that cobblestone, which leaves us with this tunnel that has cleared out any liquids or anything else dangerous that's in the tunnel. So you can just sit here fully AFK. It'll mine through lava, water, literally anything, and you will be completely safe. The only danger is that I can never figure out a way to make it place torches automatically, so you get quite a dark little tunnel, but that's not too bad, because honestly, I never really fully AFK at this thing, so I just go along and place torches for it. And then, of course, all of the items that it's collecting here are getting stored in these chests here, so that's pretty much the limit of how long it can go, is just until these chests fill up, but any iron or ores or whatever will get put in there, which is a little unfortunate in that it's mostly getting clogged with cobblestone, right? That's like 90% of what it's mining, so you don't quite get as much capacity as you could if it didn't pick up the cobblestone, but there's no great lag-free way to just like drop it on the floor, so it's kind of unavoidable. But I'm gonna let this thing run until all of the chests fill up, and we'll see how much ore we get, although it's probably not going to be a whole lot, because as you can tell, I've already done a strip mine here, and this thing doesn't mine any of the ores around the tunnel it's going in, so it'll leave some exposed ones here. So I have a feeling I'm not actually going to get a ton of ores, just because this strip mine will have already gotten a lot of them, but we'll see. We have a problem. It broke. I don't really know what happened, because there's like literally nothing here, and this is not the first bit of air it had to go over, but it just like didn't place cobblestone on the bottom there, and it kind of broke. I picked it up because, like, you know, I'm not just gonna let it sit there, but it's not like it ran out of cobblestone to place. Like, it has plenty, and has, like, you know, way more elsewhere, but it kind of just like it just didn't place cobblestone, and it fell through the floor. To be fair though, I have been going for like probably, actually, yeah, how far away from 0, am I? Yeah, 1,000 blocks. So 1,000 blocks failure free, which is still pretty good. And I think I'm just gonna call it there, because honestly, the amount of walking I'm gonna have to do to get back is already getting to kind of a lot, so I'm just gonna go back now, and just with that brief look that I just did through the mining machine, it looks like we actually got a decent bit of ore. More specifically, this much ore, which is actually really good for the amount of time I just spent mining. I accidentally had a recording going the entire time, so it was 47 minutes and 33 seconds of mining. We got like 2 stacks of iron, a ton of copper, unsurprisingly. Unfortunately, though, the only one that's a little problematic is the amount of coal. The thing with coal is it doesn't actually like spawn that far down, so even just here, which is where we were mining, there's not actually a ton of coal, so I didn't get a lot, but I'll also have to do some mining like a little bit higher up, somewhere around here, and that'll get us plenty of coal, so that should be fine. And yeah, other than that, got some gold and the insane amount of lapis, honestly, for how rare I thought lapis was, but I guess it's more common than I thought. So this thing is great, and using this iron, I can make this even bigger, because the thing is, now that I have this like core of the machine, this like little bit in the center, I can just add as many drills as I want, and then just add more chests to compensate. Although there is actually a limit in that you can only have so many items in inventories in contraptions before it actually stops letting you pick it up like that, because if there were too many items in there, there'd be too much NBT data, and the game would crash, which is not a good thing. But I can add as many drills as I want, but the inventory space of it is slightly limited. But before we go ahead and add more drills and make this thing into a gigantic monster, there's one more problem I have to address, and that is that these chests are filled with items that most of which I don't want, and I'm gonna have to probably sort through all of the ones that are in here currently, and that's gonna take a while, mostly because of my indecision of, oh, do I keep 2 stacks of granite that I'll never use? I don't know, but probably not, but I could. Instead, I want to make a machine that does it for me. Ironically, this machine that I'm going to build is probably going to be bigger than the actual drill itself, but when I made this elevator earlier, I actually labeled the floor 0 and then -2, because -1 is going to be this drill docking station. I'm thinking I'm just going to build it underground here, because there's a pretty good amount of space that doesn't have like water and stuff in the way, so it's just going to be a place where I can put down the drill, it'll empty out all of the items through these portable storage interfaces, and it'll sort them into valuables, kind of valuable things that I want to keep a little of, like cobblestone, and then things like diorite that I just want to trash and never see again. And I'm going to build this whole thing with schematic cannon for two main reasons. One is that it's essentially just a giant hole, and the schematic cannon can do that faster than I can with honestly not that much gunpowder. I would need a fraction of this to dig out the full like 3,000 or something blocks I'm going to do. And B, if I do it with the schematic cannon, I can design it in a creative world first, and that will just result in a much better system that's actually like organized instead of a mess that I would actually make in survival mode. And also, third reason, I happen to have all the resources in this chest, so let's go ahead and build it. Oh, and don't worry, I only skipped over about 3 hours of resource gathering for all of this, and gotta say, it wasn't the most interesting thing, but now I get to have the fun part of watching the schematic cannon build something while I just sit here. It's so nice, because I'm like all done with the project. I just get to like watch it. It's like watching a time lapse. But I like haven't already recorded the time lapse. It's great. Actually, that wasn't as satisfying as I originally thought it was, because it took a while for it to actually dig out this full 3,000 block room. I think it's quite large and it doesn't do it very fast, but it's done now and it looks pretty good. This is the only bit that's actually like the sorting system. The rest of this is just space for the drill, and of course we have a dock for the elevator here, just so I can get up and down really easily. And I've made a slight modification to the drill, which is this very ugly arm. This is because eventually the drill will take up this entire wall. It'll be a big 15 by 15 square, and then these portable storage interfaces will just be like on the drills instead of on the weird cobblestone arm. But for now, it is a janky little alien thingy. And if I turn this on, it should work pretty well. What should happen is we turn that on, all of those will connect up there, which looks pretty cool, and then it'll just start dumping all of the items that are in it out into this portable storage container, which has just an insane amount of storage. I think this can hold somewhere around 100,000 items. So that happens first, and that happens actually really quickly. Even if there's more chests, that'll still happen pretty fast. And then from there, it gets filtered into all of these different cabinets and chests. And honestly, it's a little frivolous. Like, it looks much prettier than it really needs to. I could have gotten the items from here down into this item vault, which is what it's actually called. I don't know why I called it a portable storage container. I could have done this a lot more simply and a lot more like efficiently probably, but this looks cool. And considering it still works pretty well, I don't really care. But the bottom half of this is a lot more functional and a little less pretty. I mean, it still looks fine, but it's mostly just functional. We have the giant item vault, which pretty much just acts as a big splitter. You have inputs on the top, and then I have room for up to 27 different filtered outputs on the bottom, and all of the ones that are like blank here just aren't being used because I don't actually have that many items to filter for yet, but we've got all of the ores and stuff. And then on the bottom along here, we have like cobblestone, cobbled deep slate, andesite, diorite, granite, diorite, tough, and I think these last two are not being used right now, but the reason those are down here is just because these are the double chests, and then this entire metal row is empty. So I could definitely put a lot more stuff in there, and I'm definitely going to, because the thing is, all of the stuff that went into there that does get filtered, like all of that iron, and Jesus, that's a lot of iron, it's already gone through. So now we have a ton of stuff in here that is just sitting in there, which is what this is for. This trashes things really fast. Mostly it's going to trash a lot of cobblestone right now because it only keeps a chest of cobblestone, and most of this is filled with cobblestone, and some of this, realistically, I probably want to keep, but I'll figure that out later. For now, I just like trashing things, and it really does make short work of it. So now the entire thing is empty, or the entire item vault is empty, and it's ready to have another load from the drill put into it. So I'm going to go do some more mining, but I'm going to do that off camera because we are just about out of time for this episode. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here. Make sure to like the video if you liked it, and subscribe if you like it. I'll see you guys next time.